Morning, everyone. I wanted to share with you a beautiful thought of the Maharal on the holiday of Hanukkah. When most of us think about why there's a holiday of Hanukkah, the thing that comes to mind is the fact that when the Jews entered the Beis Hamikdash, which had been desecrated by the Greeks for 3 years, they found a little jar of oil. There was only enough pure oil to light the menorah for 1 day, and lo and behold, a miracle occurred that the oil burned for 8 days, and that is why we have a celebration of the 8 days of Hanukkah. There is, of course, a famous question, the question of Rabbi Yosef Karo. If indeed there was enough oil for 1 day, then the miracle of the oil is only 7 extra days. So why do we have an 8-day festival? We only ought to have a 7-day festival. There are at least 500 answers to this question, because I have a sefer that has 500 answers. I will not share with you all of those answers, but I want to share with you the answer the Maharal himself gives. The Maharal points out that although the Pach HaShemen was certainly a supernatural nace, we don't make Yomim Tovim simply because there are miracles. There are many, many miracles that have happened to the Jewish people over time, and we don't necessarily make a Yom Tov out of them. We make a Yom Tov only when the miracle pertains to either the survival of the Jewish people, some great victory over an enemy that wanted to destroy us, or some event like the dedication of the Beis Hamikdash. Therefore, the Maharal posits that the yesod, the foundation, the origin of the holiday of Hanukkah was not because of the miracle of the Pach HaShemen, but it was because of the victory over the Yevanim, a victory that was not simply a phenomenal military victory, but more importantly, represented the triumph of the Torah, of Kedusha, of holiness, over the forces of Tumah, impurity, and evil that tried to destroy the Torah and tried to destroy the Jewish people, not in a physical sense, unlike Haman, but in a spiritual sense. And therefore, the Maharal says, the 8 days of Hanukkah are a celebration of the rededication of the Beis Hamikdash, which indeed is an 8-day dedication ceremony, just as it was in the days of Moshe Rabbeinu. The question then becomes, if indeed the holiday of Hanukkah is a commemoration of the nitzachon, of the victory over the Yevanim, and the rededication of the temple, then why do we celebrate it by lighting candles at all? And why was there a miracle of the Pach HaShemen? Maharal says, because that puts the miracle of the victory in proper perspective. Because when we achieve victories in life, we often attribute our successes to our talent and our abilities. The Torah itself warns the Jewish people that when you come to the land of Canaan and you are victorious over your enemies, and you will think, V'ram levavecha, your heart will be arrogant and haughty and prideful, and you will say, Kochi v'yotzim yadi, it is my might and the strength of my hands, Asali es kol hachayil hazeh, that has allowed me to succeed and achieve victory. Therefore, the miracle of the oil reminds us that just as the ability of the oil to burn 8 days when it should have burnt 1 day was not because of any koach in the oil in terms of its own limitations should have only burnt 1 day. But God blessed that oil to go beyond its natural capacity. So too, when you contemplate your victory and your success and your hatzlacha and your triumph over the most powerful army in the world, don't make the mistake of being arrogant and smug and complacent and giving credit to yourself. It is as supernatural as the burning of the oil itself. So the Maharal's chiddush is that the reason for the celebration of Hanukkah is not the miracle of the Pach HaShemen. The reason for the celebration of Hanukkah is the ability to serve Hashem and rededicate the Beis Hamikdash. But in order that I shouldn't make the mistake of attributing my military success to my own koach, we needed the supplementary miracle of the Pach HaShemen to remind us that as we go through life and achieve our hatzlacha, it is not kochi v'yotzem yadi. It all comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because the miracle of the oil was obviously a supernatural miracle. The miracle of the nitzachon was equally supernatural. And this actually explains why in the Al HaNisim prayer that we insert both in the Shemona Esrei and the Birkas HaMazon of Hanukkah, we only mention the fact that God delivered the many into the hands of the few, the impure into the hands of the pure, the Rishoyim into the hands of the Tzaddikim, that the Greeks tried to make us forget the Torah, and Baruch Hashem, we were able to rededicate the Beis HaMikdash. There actually is no reference at all in the Al HaNisim to any supernatural miracle of the Pach HaShemen, although of course that miracle occurred, and the Maral says that itself is evidence that the etzem kevius of the Yom Tov of Chanukah, the establishment of the Yom Tov of Chanukah, was the Chanukat Habayetz and the victory over the Yevanim. But there is one additional point I want to make, that is, historically, there's something very interesting about the Chanukah story. The rededication of the Mikdash and the lighting of the oil was not the end of the war against the Yevanim. The war against the Yevanim actually lasted another 25 years. So the miracle of the Pach HaShemen is not at the end of a struggle. It is towards the beginning of the struggle. And in many, many ways, that conveys a beautiful message. Because if you think about the Maccabees, this was a small group of people fighting against the most powerful army in the world. And one has to remember that even most of the Jewish people thought the Maccabees were fanatics. They thought they were old-fashioned people who are standing up for primitive religion, as opposed to the wonders of Hellenism, its philosophy, its attractions. And one could imagine that there must have been many, many mornings where the Maccabees would ask themselves, what's the use of going on? What's the tachlis of fighting and struggling when we're so small and we're so insignificant and there's no real chance that we'll ever achieve anything? Comes the miracle of the Pach HaShemen, in which that oil too had only a one-day capacity. But when you do what you can, Hashem blesses your efforts beyond what you thought would be possible. That was the chizuk, that was the comfort, that was the strength that Hashem was giving to the Maccabees. Don't give up. It's a much more powerful message at the beginning of the struggle than it would have been at the end of the struggle. It's telling them, don't give up. Do what you can even when it looks like it's impossible. And I will bless your efforts beyond what you thought would be possible. This is a very important lesson for all of us. We live in a world of great darkness. We live in a world of ignorance. We live in a world where even most of the Jewish people do not follow the Torah. We live in a world of hatred and violence. And every individual person has their own private darkness and their own private struggle. And the role of a Jew, the role of every one of us, is to generate some type of light in that darkness. But we often think, how much light can I generate? The darkness is so great. What's the point? What is the lesson of Chanukah? You light the little bit of light that you have, and then you can achieve a success beyond what you thought was possible, because Hashem takes over. I know that I'm addressing my words to our Talmidim and to our alumni, and I know that Baruch Hashem, many of you, all of you, are people that have a great light to give to the world, your Torah, your mitzvos, the families that you create. And I just want you to know that one of the most important messages of Hanukkah is that each of us has a capacity of light to dispel the darkness. And even when we think it's small and it's ineffectual, and what's the tachlis? Remember the Maccabees, they may have thought the same thing. And Hashem gave them a miracle where that little bit of light went way beyond what they thought would have been possible. And that's a message for all of us. Freilich Chanukah, may all of us be zocheh to be people who truly generate light in the middle of this darkness.